This is the New York City Board of Standards and Appeals Public Review Session for March 11, 2014. We'll begin with the special order calendar, decision items. Item number 1, 33104BZ, 26 Cortlandt Street, Manhattan.
As you know, we closed this case. In their recent submission to us, the applicant has asked for the additional space. I think Commissioner Hinkson had recommended that they consider that. So it's about 1,000 square feet in addition, and it would increase the FAR, which is currently at 15.6 to 15.73. And the applicant has noted that they will retire approximately 9,200 square feet from 1012 Cortlandt Street. Any concerns?
No. Okay. New cases, item number 2, 24055BZ, 20722 Northern Boulevard, Queens.
All right, questions and comments? They're asking for more time to get their certificate of occupancy. Any issues? Yes.
Did they detail how much time they needed?
I'm just looking at my notes. I'm not sure. We can ask them to clarify to us how much time they need. Other questions?
Yeah, I had a question. They said that the subject site is currently used in conjunction with the adjacent automobile dealership for the preparation of cars that are sold. I wonder if they could just give us a more detailed explanation of what the relationship between the businesses and the property is, just sort of.
And it's not really adjacent. It's like four
Them.
stores down or four storefronts down.
Right.
So,
Okay. Any other questions? All right.
Item number 3, 24-96BZ, 213 Madison Street, Manhattan.
All right. This is also a case for an extension of time to obtain their C of O. In this particular case, they said they need another year for it. Issues, comments? Yes.
the banner on the exterior, I thought the last time we had asked them to remove it,
And they
Right.
did.
and they did, but it
back
has
in the
returned.
photos.
Right, and we had asked them to remove the armature also.
Yes.
And they didn't.
All right. So,
There's also a couple of roof flags.
I'm sorry?
Roof flags.
Roof flags. Okay. All right. But let's ask them to once again remove this extraneous signage. Any other questions or concerns?
Appeals calendar, decision items, item number 4, 12313A, 86 Bedford Street, Manhattan.
The applicant has asked us to defer the decision date until the point where they're reissued the permits. Does the board have any concerns about that? I know in their papers, they also made an argument that they feel that the board should take action on this case. Our counsel looked at the case law that they provided and has advised the board that, yes. Becca, do you want to speak to that?
Okay.
Okay, so we can defer this for about a month. By that time, hopefully they'll get their permits.
Continued hearing items, item number 5, 16612A, 638 East 11th Street, Manhattan. Do you want me to pull the other one through? Item number 6, 10713A, 638 East 11th Street, also.
The applicants asked for an adjournment. They're supposed to be meeting with the buildings department in this case.
New cases, item number 7, 21513A, 300 Four Corners Road, Staten Island.
All right, I don't think there's any case here. The appellant is asking us to reverse the buildings department's decision that the areas such as the cellar, the attic, and the garage do not get the deduction in floor area for its energy-efficient walls. But the buildings department's position is those areas are already exempt from floor area, and then there's no reason to, again, deduct them. I think it seems very rational and straightforward what the buildings department is saying. You have to have something that's included in order to be deducted. If it's not included in the first place, how can you deduct it? So I don't think there's any case here.
I agree.
I just have a question for the appellant, which is I'm not sure why they're really are concerned about this, because it seems they have additional square footage on the table. They haven't built out their square feet, so I don't even think it's necessary for them to take these deductions. Okay.
Zoning calendar, decision items, item number 1, 211-12BZ, 164 Coffee Street, Brooklyn.
We'll defer this case. There's still ongoing work with DEP.
Item number 2, 192-13BZ, 354, 361 West Street, Manhattan.
Are there any concerns with this? I think their last submission was actually quite helpful in terms of some of the graphics that they put together. And at the last hearing, I know they clarified some concerns that Commissioner Montanez and myself had regarding the hardship costs and the construction. Are there any issues? No. Okay, good.
Item number 3, 236-13BZ, 423 West 55th Street, Manhattan.
Any questions on this case? No. Okay, good.
Item number 4, 274-13BZ, 7914 3rd Avenue, Brooklyn.
Are there any issues with this case? Okay.
Continued hearing items, item number 5, 54-12BZ, 5065-3900 Second Street, Queens.
The applicant made a submission. They looked at two alternatives. One was a community facility on the ground floor, just one story, and then a community facility with 2 stories of residential, and that is what they're proposing right now. I would just like to alert the applicant that when we had our hearing last time, we had actually asked them to look at a scenario which was 1 story of community facility and 1 story of residential, which they haven't done. I just want to step back as to what this case is about. I know that some of the board members were very skeptical that there was a case here at all. The site is developed. It has one home on it, as well as a community facility use. Its configuration is very similar to all the other lots on that block. The applicant came back to us and showed that these other lots, while they're similar in its configuration, they were interior lots, and all the lots are underdeveloped, but the other lots, as interior lots, had the ability to enlarge and could take them up to about 1.3 FAR. And this current site was fairly underdeveloped. I think that at this point, it seems that that's what we should allow them to get, something that brings them at par with these other sites. And that is really a 1-story community facility and a 1-story residential. Or they can do 2 stories of residential. If you look at the buildings in the surrounding area, most of them are 2 stories as well, and I think it would be much more befitting, and that's what they should explore. I know they've done a financial as well. Commissioner Otley-Brown?
Yes, we had asked them to redo the financials primarily to adjust the value of the site downward. They had originally included in the site value unused development rights, and we felt that sites of this type, residential, small, low density in the boroughs, did not trade with unused development rights, and there actually was a site that they used as a comparable that was $375,000, which was a home that was similarly sized to this home on a lot about the same size, and we felt that that would most likely be reflective of the actual site value here, with no development rights assigned to it. And they did revise the site value downward, but now, instead of using $375,000 that we requested that they use, they then adjusted that sale upwards for time since October 2013, which is kind of interesting because when they did the previous financial in October 2013, they didn't think it was necessary to adjust the site value at all for time. But now all of a sudden this was an issue. And we felt that if they did the 1-story community facility with the 1-story residential based on the adjustment in the site value and the income, it should work. However, in this financial, it doesn't work, which led us to try and figure out what was going on here that changed that we can't readily see. And I see there are some other issues on the development side of the equation that have changed that we have not asked to change, and I don't quite understand why they've changed them, but it certainly skewed the result. And one of the major issues is the construction costs, which since October 2013 have all of a sudden gone up $10 a square foot with no explanation as to why. So I agree with you that if they would just use the original figures that we all agreed to in October, the one-story community facility with either residential above or the two-story residential should work.
I agree. I mean, I said that first, but happy that you agree with me. Other commissioners? Okay.
Item number 6, 12413BZ, 95 Grattan Street, Brooklyn.
The applicants ask for an adjournment.
Item number 7, 12513BZ, 97 Grattan Street, Brooklyn.
The applicants ask for an adjournment.
Item number 8, 17913BZ, 933, 939 East 24th Street, Brooklyn.
All right, questions and comments? Yes, Commissioner Montanez?
Well, I think they have reduced the height by a foot, the building height, but I think they could reduce the building height further because they have this almost like boxy parapet structure which has no access, and it's just increasing the height of the building. So maybe a couple of feet it could be reduced.
I agree. Other comments? All right.
Item number 9, 193-13BZ, 4770 White Plains Road, the Bronx.
The applicant has asked for an adjournment.
Item number 10, 22813BZ, 157 Columbus Avenue, Manhattan.
All right. As the board knows, we received submissions from both sides, and I just want to go over some of the points. First, on the structural integrity, I think there's enough evidence to put that issue to bed here. I think the letter that we received from the structural engineer that time with the architectural firm has laid out that they believe that there's not going to be any impact or any compromise to its structure based on the activities that's going to take place under this PCE. Commissioner?
Yes, it was a very thorough representation with calculations, and it was signed and sealed, and I don't think there's any question that he emphatically feels that there's no structural danger from this PCE.
Okay. Any other comments on the structure? All right. Then there was the issue of noise. The applicant went back and tested again. They did it at the 5th floor commercial space, which they claimed was vacant, and had a very low ambient noise level. They, as per our suggestion, simulated a class, and it seems that its readings show that, in fact, particularly with any, with the insulation and sound attenuation in place, that is not going to violate the DEP noise code. Any concerns about that? Yes, Commissioner.
No, I just wanted to mention, I had brought up the question of which section of the noise code to apply, and I did check into it with someone at DEP, and the consultant is correct, that it's 24-218, unreasonable noise, section 3, as long as you can see a definitive peak. If there's a classroom setting and there's multiple weights dropping one after the other, then the sections 1 or 2 would be applicable, which limited according to the time of day. So, but it's the same section, not the commercial section.
Okay. All right. Any other questions about the noise? I think it'd be helpful if the applicant actually tells us the time frame in which they can put this insulation or sound attenuation in place, since this is an ongoing, I'm not sure it's having full activity taking place, but it is functioning right now, and I think we want to make sure that any attenuation is put in place very quickly. There were then there's the issue about the space, which is the R8B space or R8 space. And it just was unclear to me whether they've actually completed that wall. It was framed at one point. I did take a site visit, and at that time, it was just the framing that was put up. And I think we just want to make sure that that wall is in fact completed quickly, and it's sealed so that there's no PCE activity taking place.
Right. One of the residential neighbors said that as of the 24th of February, that it had not been constructed and that the matting and fixtures remained. However, the applicant's representative states that the wall has been constructed as per the plans.
Right, I read that, and
So
I
I'd
know-
like to know what the truth is.
right, and I had gone there on Wednesday. I don't know what the papers were in before that, but if they can just clarify to us what they were talking about. But I think the board obviously wants to see that done in order for any kind of support of this case. There were two other areas. I think the hours of operation, they talked about 6 to 10 p.m. I didn't have any concerns with those hours. Those seemed like very typical hours. Yes,
But there is an issue that they were silent on, and that's the question of the trainers having keys to have access to the space.
right.
Because there were allegations that there was late-night activity taking place, because apparently the way this CrossFit operation operates is that they pay their trainers a certain salary, and then they allow them to use the space for private clients.
Right. And
So it needs to be clear, I think, that the hours of operation
It's
are
for
the
everyone,
hours of
yes.
operation, whether it's
I agree.
officially for CrossFit classes or individual private training.
Absolutely. Okay, and I think another issue that the board can consider, if we feel strongly about monitoring this space, is whether we should limit its term to less than 10 years, and we can have a discussion about that. I didn't find anything really in the opposition's papers that were persuasive to me regarding a basis for denying this application. The board members?
I think they've discussed the issues that we raised, and they've answered us, with the exception of a couple of issues that we can talk about tomorrow, but I think that they've been responsive to.
Right,
our
I don't
issues.
think there's any neighborhood character issues associated with this, with PCEs across the street from it.
Right.
And given the commercial nature of that avenue, so I think that's fine. And if we're satisfied on the noise, vibration, and structural integrity issues, then I would agree that I don't see a basis for denial. And the fact that it's a legalization concerns me less than the fact that earlier in this process, it appears that the applicant made misrepresentations to us. I think that gives me some pause as to the applicant's credibility, because they knew or should have known that it was operating going back quite a ways.
Right, but the only thing I would say is that the way it's been represented from both sides is somewhat nebulous. There's one sort of representation that there's been ongoing legalization. I think that in terms of clarifying how the space has been used, it was, at least in my mind, I thought it was much more clear at the last hearing where they talked about that there
Yeah.
were certain specific classes taking place.
Right, I think it was clarified at the last hearing,
Right.
but I think at earlier hearings, there were categorical statements made by one of the applicant's representatives that it was not in operation, and it was.
Well, it wasn't in operation at the time of the hearing, because then it went back into operation in November. So from July to about November, I don't believe there was any activity taking place. At least that's my recollection. Anyway, I would say that that misrepresentation, I would give them the benefit of doubt that it wasn't done in bad faith, that sometimes teams get together and things are said, and I think it's been clarified for the record. Are there other concerns? All right. Okay.
Item number 11, 26913BZ, 110 West 73rd Street, Manhattan.
We had raised a few issues at the last hearing. We talked about the trash, and they said that they're going to provide a space indoors and that they would increase the number of trash pickups over the week. Yes, questions? I think it'd be helpful if they show us where that is. Yes.
Right, and also are they going to have the trash pickup while they're open? So they just bring the trash directly out, or are they going to store it on the street? And I think some of the neighbors complained about the hours of pickup.
I agree. I think they should tell us what it is right now, how it's going to be increased, what are the hours, because we don't want it to be late night. I know that was one issue. We had a question about sound attenuation, Commissioner? But,
Yes, they spoke about installing a soundproof board to reduce the noise. However, they don't really show us where that board is going to be. If they could put that on the plans, that would be helpful.
Okay.
And maybe some specifications.
Yes.
Okay.
And there was another issue that was brought to our attention by one of the neighbors, and that was the issue of the use of the backyard for dining, and the applicant applicant was silent on that issue in their latest submission, and I think we need to make sure that the backyard is not being.
Well, okay, it was, yes, I remember they talked about it, they said they had complained, if I remember correctly, they said it had ceased. So you have the existing restaurant, which is functioning, and that's in the commercial district. Are you concerned about the use of the backyard in the commercial district?
Yes,
Okay,
because of the noise for the residential tenants.
okay, all right. That may be allowed as of right, I don't know, that can be clarified to us.
Okay.
I think the issue before us is they're planning to expand this to the residential portion, or the residential district, and right now it's not functioning, and as far as I'm concerned, they're not using that portion of the backyard as of today, and they have no intentions of doing it.
Maybe they can provide us some photos.
Okay. All right, there's some technical issues here. One is that as a part of this application, the lot that's before us, which is lot 36, I believe, needs to be part of the zoning lot with the commercial use. That is the way that the text is written, and they should represent it in that way in their application material as well as in their drawings and zoning calculations, and if they could revise their papers accordingly. And also, this is in a historic district, so I think it'd be helpful for us to know where they are with landmarks.
New cases, item number 12, 214-12BZ, 2784 Coney Island Avenue, Brooklyn.
All right, this is a legalization, but it has, the car wash has been padlocked, it's not actually functioning. I don't think there's a case here. I think their papers are very confusing. They talk a lot about an appeals case, but there is no appeals case before us. And it seems maybe at one point they were considering questioning the buildings department determination regarding whether this use had discontinued, but that is not in their papers right now, and I think they should remove that. It just clouds the entire discussion. It seems that they're relying primarily on good faith reliance, and I think from that perspective, there's really very little evidence in the record that shores up that argument. They talk very vaguely about the fact that they were approved in, I believe, September of 2010. I'm not sure when they got their permit. I'm not sure how much work was done. The stop work orders came in May and June of 2011. They talk about one of the commissioners, the acting commissioner of Brooklyn office, who at one point identified or noted that the discontinuance, they had established that, in fact, the use had not been discontinued, but within 2 weeks, the stop work order was issued again. So that window where a commissioner may have agreed through a reconsideration and the amount of work that was done is really a 2-week gap. So the idea that they spent $1 million and that's a hardship for them is just very questionable. If you look at even the estimates that they've given us, a good portion of that money spent was after the stop work orders were in place. So, and we're sort of questioned whether this use was legal to begin with. So, if you go beyond that, there really isn't much of a case. It's a perfectly fine site. It's a commercial. It's in a commercial district and could have commercial use.
Right, I agree. I found the papers to be confusing, because I kept going back to the appeals calendar to see if there actually had been an appeals case filed. Somehow I missed it, but no, there wasn't. And I agree that the whole question of good faith reliance we've heard raised in other cases, and there are some extreme cases when a municipality can be deemed to be having violated good faith through repeated actions. But there's not even any good discussion in the papers about the case law involved in that. So I wasn't persuaded.
Right, other comments? Right, yes,
I took a look at the financials, and to me, the financials were not very telling of there being any case. It was kind of hard to tell what they were trying to bring out. It is a legalization, and they did follow the suggestions that we have when valuing a legalization to start with vacant land and then build up. And they start with the vacant land, and they build in the construction costs for a retail building, and of course, they leave the construction costs out for the car wash in the two scenarios. And naturally, if you have any construction costs and you don't have enough income to overcome that, then it's not going to work. So the retail building doesn't work, and then the car wash with no construction costs, of course, does work. If you were to include the construction costs in, the car wash would not work, the same way the retail wouldn't work, which leads me to think, why is one more feasible than the other? So what were they trying to tell us? So I don't think that the financials help this case at all, basically.
Right. I think the other thing is that adjacent to this site is,
Commercial
is a commercial.
building that seems to be, doing a great deal of business. So I was not persuaded by their argument that commercial activity, other than their entity, couldn't work. It just didn't make sense.
Right, and it was a case before the board. It was a gas station. It was converted to the 7-Eleven and probably had remediation costs, but they were able to do it and was feasible. So even if the site historically was a car wash and it discontinued, I'm not sure that there's a real basis for saying or claiming that the site cannot be converted to a viable commercial use.
Item number 13, 24613BZ, 514 49th Street, Brooklyn.
All right, it's a variance for both floor area and rear yard associated with Sunset Terrace Family Healthcare. They're asking for additional square footage, which they claim they could otherwise get through a special permit, which allows community facilities to enlarge by 10% of the allowable FAR. So in this case, if it was 2 FAR, they could be able to go up to 2.2 FAR, and they're at 2.14. However, the usage of that square footage is within the rear yard, and therefore they're coming to us for a variance. I think their papers, leaving aside that there may be merit to this case and that it's fairly modest, I think their papers really do not build a good case for them.
Right.
I don't think they make an A finding that has any clear nexus to what they're proposing and this broad programmatic need of being a part of I think they call it
Medicaid redesign.
the Medicaid redesign program, that they're one of the coordinators. I think they talk about very broadly that it's going to bring more patients, but I think there isn't any clear relationship with what they're proposing. Most of it is storage, some of it is offices, and there are a few, dental exam rooms. But when they talk about the program, it's about mental health. So I didn't really understand whether they're reorganizing the spaces within this building to accommodate this new program. It just wasn't clear. Yes.
They sort of make an obsolescence of the building argument.
Yes.
But it's almost as if they just touch on it and then move on to talk about the programmatic needs. So while the relief that they're seeking is relatively modest, I agree with you that the papers did not seem to create a strong A finding.
Right. Commissioner?
Right, and to me, they don't really go into detail as to why what they have now is not adequate, and they need to go into more of detail about how expanding, I guess, that program somehow runs into trouble with the structure of the current building. And they do talk a little bit about widening corridors to facilitate patient movement, but they don't really base that on any figures in terms of how wide are the corridors now, how deficient are the corridors now, how many people move through them that can't get from place to place. So I think they need to flesh this out.
Right. Yes. Other comments?
No, I just agree. I did not see that there was any real nexus between this Medicaid program that they talk about and the new space. I would imagine that if you're a coordinator or that you're providing services for Medicaid and you need additional space that you could see clearly that the spaces are used for particular items in the program. And I didn't see that. I saw actually sort of the opposite, where perhaps they've put existing programs and existing spaces sort of in that new area, and then maybe that freed up spaces in other areas, but they didn't explain how that actually worked with this program. So if they're going to sort of harken back to being able to provide services under the new program, they're going to have to really show how the additional space that they need is paramount in that mission. I don't think they've done that.
All right, other comments? All right, I just had a few other comments. One is that I agree with my fellow commissioners on this. I think my concern is that you can get the square footage, but why do you have to put it in the way that they've put it here? And I looked at the site plan, and there's a big area where you have a 30-foot side yard, and it's just not clear to me why you can't accommodate that square footage over there. They are doing, I think, a significant construction while adding the additional square footage to the rear, because they're breaking down the wall, they're expanding spaces. So that was one thing that I believe they didn't discuss, which is why can't you put it on the first and the second floor, but not in the place where they're talking about, since it's other places within the building that you can enlarge. So that's one. I think that the as of right that they've shown us feels like it's not comparing apples to apples. The enlargement that they have includes egress and other things, while the proposal has a different program. So it's really hard to compare the two. You have 4 floors in one case, the as of right, and then you have 2 floors. But there's no ability or no analysis in sort of showing us whether they lose certain spaces, or they're not able to, or the spaces are smaller, or the spaces are not programmatically able to function. So I think, I truly believe that they need to go back and look at this more critically. Their A finding is barely a paragraph long, and neither does it talk much about the obsolescence in the building, the as of right, or the program and its ability to be accommodated under the proposal.
Item number 14, 27613BZ, 1629 First Avenue, Manhattan.
This is for PCE. Any questions?
I was curious, what
Yes.
is the age range of their patrons? I think it's the first PCE we've seen for children.
Yes, it may
Yeah,
be.
also
Right.
it seems like the basketball league.
Right, and what are their hours of operation?
Okay. I think their hours, if I remember correctly, are 8 to 9 every day.
Okay, I didn't see
That's, I
that.
think that's what it is, and we can ask them about the age group.
Item number 15, 290-13BZ, 2244 Church Avenue, Brooklyn.
Also PCE, any questions or concerns?
They don't require any parking?
Okay, so this is the one which is the building that's under construction,
Right.
right? What we can do is we can ask them to show us, maybe they can give us the buildings department drawings, and we can make sure that the area that's being proposed for PC has the same parking requirements as their as of right, in which case it should be addressed. Okay?
The signage is on the plans, shown on the plans, but I think there should be a statement that it complies with the C4 district regs,
Okay,
some affirmative statement.
sure. Right?
Item number 16, 306-13BZ, 3766 Bedford Avenue, Brooklyn.
All right, questions or comments? Single-family home enlargement?
I had a question regarding the landscaping requirements, and I like the turret
Mhm, but
at
you-
the rear, but I wasn't sure if it's a permitted obstruction.
Okay, we can ask them.
But it's very lovely.
Okay, yes, I was
It's a very modest addition.
very modest, and it's sort of adds some verve to the architecture of the building. We can ask them and make sure that it is either within the envelope it's permitted.
Permitted.
Okay.
This concludes the review session for March 11th.